Hi, this is Steve Webster. Thanks for joining today's thought. So, my mom, who's 88 years old, she lives with us, help her where we can, things like that. But she's been watching some of these today's thoughts, being a mom and everything, and she seems to can't let go of dinosaurs and age of the Earth sort of thing, and she's adorable. She's even though she's legally blind with macular degeneration, she's been equipped with talking to the Fire Stick through her TV to YouTube and find all this stuff. So in regards to that, and I think she's not alone. It's like when you think about it, we've been told from as children, kindergarten perhaps, through university education to public life, even in the news, it's just a matter of fact now that fossils that we find of so-called prehistory dinosaurs that are evidence that we observed there were these creatures based on the fossil record, archaeology digs, and so forth, that these large animals did exist and other species that we don't have today. And it just took millions of years to do that. So um, this will be many parts on this topic. So can't do it. It's sometimes some things are hard to squeeze down, and I think this is one of them. So today's part, we're going to talk about a premise, which is a logical thing. When somebody says something to you, do you agree with the premise or do you not agree with the premise? Or are you not thinking that way? Whatever they say, you go from there. Have you been tricked? See that in politics all the time, right? That will be quick. And then we're going to talk about in this part about the fossil record. How long does it really take to create a fossil? And the fossil record itself may be multiple parts, but we're going to start that. Then eventually I'll get back to God's word where someone can say or make an argument to say, well, the Bible doesn't even mention dinosaurs. It's like they're right. And of course, most of that is because the word dinosaur wasn't created until much later. Like, I have to look this up. I thought it was like 1800s or something like that. So, of course, it's not in there. Was there anything else in the word that kind of indirectly, or not directly, indirectly, but maybe talks about these large creatures? The answer is yes. There are descriptions of dinosaurs in the Bible. But that's another part. Yes, people have drawn things of dinosaurs from way back when on rocks and things like that, but that's another discussion. So for today, premise, and do we agree with the premise? Do we not agree with the premise? And how do we create a fossil? What are the what's required to create a fossil? How long can it take to create a fossil in a lab or without a lab? And things like that. And what I'm going to do is share my screen, and I'm actually going to chat with ChatGPT, the O1 thinking module, and have a discussion with it. And I will show you those results in this part. So let's get going, and I hope you enjoy today's conversation. So let me pause and then quickly share my screen. And you can choose models and these things. And so, what is ChatGPT? It's known as a large language model, and I spent well over a year on this before AI really became a thing. We were able to train via machine learning. My side business, my company, we've actually helped certain companies with like machine learning and things like that. Well, AI is they're really separate from machine learning, but sometimes people cross over, and AI, machine learning could be part of AI, but whatever. So a large language model is feeding and training these models in a very big and expensive way. Speed, expense, more energy, and all that stuff. So we have ChatGPT, which a lot of people are familiar with. So before I go there, let me take you to the premise discussion. So here I went to incognito on my computer. I said logical arguments about premises and statements or questions. And of course, Gemini or Google has its own response, but I think this is good enough. It says a logical argument about premises refers to analyzing the statements used as the foundation of an argument to determine if they are strong enough and logically logically consistent to support the conclusion being made. And then you have a definition, a premise. Let me increase my screen. A premise is a statement that is accepted as true and is used as evidence to support a conclusion in an argument. It's the building block of a logical argument. So now that is the definition of a premise. So then, do we recognize when someone is stating a premise? So we continue. There's role, which is here. Then, as far as identifying, it says look for phrases like "oh, because of this," or "since this is true," or "oops, excuse me," as or given that in a statement to identify the premise. So these are hints that a premise is being stated. Happens a lot in politics, as I mentioned before, I think. So it's it's quite interesting. Evaluating premises in a logical argument. We need to assess whether each premise is factually true or widely accepted as true. And that's the part I really want to zoom in on. So anybody can, Google this themselves. So the truth value, assess whether each premise is factually true or widely accepted as true. So if someone's talking to me, wherever it may be, maybe it's not a big deal, it's just a little conversation, it could be a very important conversation. I need to have radar up in a sense. Are they using things like because, since, as, or given that, which is a hint they're stating a premise? It's possible for me to hear, maybe it's a sincere, passionate plea with emotion, and this premise is said, but I still need to say, well, regardless of your heart, your passion, and what you're saying, the sincerity of it all, you could be sincerely wrong because your premise is not true. And we need to understand that, right? We need to understand that. Perhaps some of these premises are now coming to mind in your recent conversations you've had with people, right? So it is my job to say, okay, you just said something to me. I'm breaking this down. You're saying something to me with sincerity, with passion, and I kind of see where you're going with a question. It's an important topic. I see why you're saying that, but I gotta tell you, I don't agree with your premise. Therefore, I'm ignoring everything you're asking or saying. Your premise is wrong, and here's why it's wrong. It's not factually true. That is not. So you identify the promise, and they say something like, I don't know, something outrageous. I don't know, pick a color. If somebody says, "Well, since the color of the sky is this, blah 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 blah," it's like, well, excuse me, you said it in a very nice way, and you're sincere, but I don't agree with your premise. The color sky is not always that color. It's you're sincerely wrong. So that's the point I want to make about that. So keep that in mind, because as we talk about things like the fossil record, what have we been told? What are the evidences? So this is where like here, I'm going to discuss with one of the leading modules, which all that means is this machine has been trained in a very big way with a lot of information. Can you train something that has a bias? Can you train something that may not be entirely factually true? Yes. If you tell a machine of zeros and ones, and of course there's now supercomputers and stuff, and this Willow thing, um, sidebar there, but it's possible to feed it, and it assumes it's true, and it will defend, and it will explain based on its reasoning capabilities what it can do. So as we go through this, you will see some examples of that, and as I go through it, so my goal is not to take too much time, but some things that you have to slow down a little bit. So in this case, I start off. I guess I should try and enlarge my screen again. Hope that helps. I can maybe get rid of that. What is the process to take a biological life form to create a fossil in a lab? What is needed? What other environmental items are needed? What has to happen during the process? And this is what's interesting. How long does it take? because I'm building up a case here of the fossil record. How long does it take? We are told millions of years, but I'm asking this so-called thing that's been fed something on the topic. And to the credit of the company, it's giving me a response. I'm told to slow down. I thought only 17 seconds instead of a few minutes. That's fine. So I'm not going to read word for word for everything. I'm going to be hopping around. But to begin, we should slow down a little bit and then speed things up. Fossilization is, by definition, the replacement or encasement of biological material with minerals. Something that takes place over very long geological timescales in nature. So there we have it. It's saying it's taking a very long geological timescales in nature. It's been fed that. It's giving me back. Okay, let's continue. However, researchers have developed ways to simulate or partially replicate this response in a controlled laboratory environments. Okay, so very long, however. Below is an overview of how this can be done, what conditions are required, and how long it might take in a lab setting. Because that's based on my question. I'm trying to get, is it possible to observe? I mean, that's what science is. You observe and you repeat. Well, this isn't true because you can have critical papers and other labs can try things. It's, well, no, what you're saying I couldn't repeat, but I was able to repeat using this. So it's for the good, right? So scrutiny or whatever they call it. All right, so number one, and I go back to this as I skip here and speed up things a little while, but number one, understanding natural fossilization. Interesting. In nature, fossilization typically happens in a few steps. So I appreciate kind of like the executive summary here, right? One, death and rapid burial. Two, decay of soft tissues. I don't know if you have to, and I mentioned that further down, so I challenge it. Mineral replacement or primin, oh my gosh, mineralization. Sorry for butchering that. So these are three things that are needed. So you'll see down below, I will challenge it on, it was making a case on time, as you'll see here in a moment. To say, well, this can take a long time. It's like, well, yes, but you said you need three things. You need death and rapid burial. When things die, they don't always sink to the bottom. And I get to that. So let's go down. And then here it says natural fossilization can require thousands to millions of years. It was fed that. So I'm trying to separate what we can do in a lab and what's required. That was my question. But it's already kind of giving me something I didn't bring up. But I did in a way. How long does it take? So it's throwing that out. So it's interesting. So number two, laboratory fossilization overview, and it has some goals. Prevent the complete decay. Encourage rapid, because complete decay means there's nothing to fossilize. Because a bone is cells and microorganisms can eat bone and you have nothing to fossilize. So you got to prevent the complete decay. Encourage rapid mineral precipitation and or infiltration. And three, mimic the pressure, the temperature, and chemical environment. All right, so cool. So then it says, okay, what materials conditions are needed? It says biological specimen, minimal rich solution, matrix or substrate, control of oxygen levels, pressure and temperature, pH control. That's interesting. And four, the typical lab process step by step. You prepare burial or encasement and setting the conditions. You see oxygen there, temperature and pressure, mineral infiltration replacement. There's this replacement. The idea is in the most tiny of things, you're replacing things with things like minerals and so forth. This is interesting. Soft tissue may break down partially, leaving behind a mineral cast or chemically stabilized matrix that preserves fine details. So it does say may break down. So in theory, it's possible to fossilize something with not just the bones. I don't know if you all realize that. Post-treatment and analysis. After desired period, the specimen is removed, dried, and sometimes stabilized further. Microscopic or scanning electron microscope analysis often shows how well the structure has been mineralized. So that's good to know. How long does it take? This is kind of like where we're going, right? Or where I'm going. Accelerated lab processes, weeks to months. Okay, it doesn't say million years, but in a lab you can do that under certain conditions, right? Under ideal lab conditions. So you have to have certain conditions: temperature, pressure, chemistry, and so forth. Partial versus complete mineral replacement. It says quickly you might get partial mineral infilling, enough to see a fossil-like structure forming. It then says complete replacement, truly petrified, may still take much longer, although usually far less than geological timescales. Interesting. So again, we can see this, we can observe it. In fact, if you search the internet, you can see how you can create a fossil at home. It's quite interesting, but I'm talking more of a scientific lab here. All right, so additional environmental or process factors, which was something I want to know. So it talks about these key takeaways, practical example, petrified wood in a lab, and then it has a summary, and the summary says creating a fossil in a laboratory involves reproducing and accelerating the natural conditions of burial, mineral-rich water flow, and partial decay. One must carefully control temperature, pressure, oxygen, pH, and mineral availability to encourage the infiltration and precipitation of minerals, while true geological fossilization takes thousands to millions of years. Wait. I was talking about labs. Why is it saying while true geological fossilization takes thousands of millions of years? I know I said I want to know how long it takes. Okay, so you're throwing it there. Scientists can produce a fossil-like results in weeks or months. So we know it's possible. Scientists themselves can create a fossil in weeks or to months. In fact, it's even possible in hours. But anyhow, offering valuable insights into how fossils form and what conditions enable or prevent the preservation of ancient life. So, isn't that interesting? While true, blah, 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 it takes thousands to millions of years. It's the AI has been fed that. So here we go. So my first challenge, thanks, very helpful. I have a question. The output results have what appears to be a speculation instead of factual, like the statement of, and I attempt to put that here, while true geological fossilization takes thousands to millions of years, scientists can produce a fossil-like result in weeks to months. And then I end my quotation marks. I further say in my response, this seems to be an oxymoron where one can observe the process, the result in days, weeks, and months. So where is the observation of, quote, while true geological fossilization takes thousands to millions of years? Am I challenging a premise? Yes. Something was said, and I want to learn more of why they said it. It took 27 seconds. First time 17, now it's 27, whatever, don't care. That's a good question, it says, because at first glance, it does seem contradictory to say these things, right? But then it tries to say, well, this is, again, these are machines, it's a model, it's trying to say, well, based on my model, I want to give you my response based on what I have. It has more than I have, right? So, but, which is good. That's why I'm going here. Geological, natural fossilization, and the artificial part. They are related processes, but conditions outcomes differ significantly. So to save you some time, it has this, and then has outcome. You get a specimen that is partially or completely blah, blah. Yeah, we kind of know that, right? And then, yet it says it lacks the broader geological context, rock layers, large-scale sedimentary structure, vast time scale that define the authentic and ancient fossil. So rock layers is a premise. If you go to the Grand Canyon, I haven't been there. I'd like to go, but I've been told and saw videos. The guides, or maybe the rangers too, I don't know, whomever they are. It could be just family too. We've been told, well, each rock layer represents a time. And because there's so many, these are millions of years. Okay, well, I challenge that premise. Mount St. Helens, a mini Grand Canyon was formed in days, and they have the same layers. And we know it did take millions of years. False statement. Large scale sedimentary structure. If something's large, does it mean it takes time? Or could it be a horrible event? Have you ever witnessed a flood? What it can do? Can you ever witness a mudslide? That doesn't necessarily mean it takes a long time. So I challenge that premise. Vast time scale. Well, I just argued that. So it's interesting. Why the discrepancy in time? So it gives its information, and then I'll scroll down to my next comment here, and this is where I have a little fun with it. Thanks for staying in with me. I'm trying to wrap this up soon. Your response has assumptions and speculation. It seems your LLM model was trained with incorrect data. Having some fun. This is disappointing because factual information via observation, repeating lab work is part of science. Let me help you with a specific example. Talking to a machine. Your response included, quote, in nature, fossilization unfolds slowly because organisms die and are buried gradually. Wait a minute. I thought for fossilization, death and burial has to be done. Not always immediately. That's a premise. Then I wrote, however, we do not observe the statement today. For example, when fish dies, it bloats and its carcass floats to the top. Well, what have we been taught in school? Fish die, they sink to the bottom, layers form upon the fish. On the fish, we have fish or marine live fossils. But I just said um, when fish dies, it bloats and its carcass floats to the top. Even heavy whales float when they die. Sometimes, oh, I see a sea creature. It turns out they examine it and say, oh no, that's the carcass from a whale. It's floating. It bloats. If a whale beaches itself, it can actually explode from the bloating. You know, it just goes up. Plus, other living marine animals and microorganisms will eat the remains, which include the bones. So while it's floating, there's a quicker decay because of other animals and microorganisms. Then I admit something. During this eating and floating can end and sink to the bottom, where more eating and microorganisms continue eating where there is nothing left. So I am admitting to something. As this eating and stuff is happening, or all the bloating is now done, it can, as it gets less buoyant, sink. I admit that, but it has to be eaten and fully all the chemical reactions of causing the bloating is gone. Then I said, an earlier response stated, I'm referring to what it stated, prevent the complete decay of the organic material. Where other internet research states a quick burial is needed, like some fossils have one fish eating another fish, which implies quick burial. We have fossils, at least I've seen one fossil like that. How can a fish be eating another fish and just die and float to the bottom like that, right? Now this one, I didn't notice this. It's now taking longer. Okay, 30 seconds now. It says you've raised some important points. As you can see here. Then the role of a quick burial in natural fossilization. So it talks about this. And I'm trying to show you about even from something that's been trained like AI, it's giving you the best results that it can based on how to reason or whatever it's doing. Slow burial versus quick burial. Where did the confusion come from? And I'll show you a premise here, or I'll show you my response based on all this in a moment. Why people still say fossilization takes a very long time. This is good to read as well. So again, you can do this yourself, or pause the video, what have you. Um, so it does some trying to explain it to me, which is good. Lab experience versus nature. So that's good. It's doing a dichotomy, whatever, between lab and natural. And underneath natural, it says real rock formations are not typically 200 to 300 unless near volcanic or deep geological regions. Well, that is somewhat like a premise. You mean it's not possible that the great deep underneath the crust, supercritical water, which is extremely hot near the mantle, bursts forth with such pressure through miles and miles and miles, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, 60 miles of granite or this crust. And then on top of the crust, you could have some sediments, I suppose, during the flood, but probably not much. And then it just takes all that temperature, all that heat, whatever's nearby. And that's a lot of heat. In fact, as a sidebar, you need higher temperatures to create a lot of precipitation. And we see results of that, which we call the Ice Age, but that's a separate topic. So then we have mineral concentrations in the groundwater can be much lower, and pressure builds gradually with sediment depth. Hence, many, but not all, natural contexts, the mineral replacement step is slower, but not all. Okay. Quick burial is widely recognized. So it's basically admitting that, yeah, you need that. Reconciling the observations. Yes, quick burial must happen to preserve intact carcasses. So it's like, okay, let's go beyond. It's now trying to say, well, it has to happen quickly. It can't just die and float around and stuff like that. So um, it is interesting. Yes, extended time scales. The fully mineralized rock-like conditions usually develop slowly. So it's zooming in on one of the three things. Now it's focusing on the mineralization process can take a while. Yes, lab fossils form faster because we force conditions, temperature, pressure, mineral concentration. Well, yeah, we want to know what are the conditions. And it's saying because we force the conditions that mimic deep time. And here it goes. It says we mimic deep time on a smaller time scale. Where's it? Where's it getting that from? That's another premise. Because we force conditions. Well, what do I take from that? Well, from a scientific perspective, there's a temperature, a range of temperature. There's got to be some pressure. There's got to be mineral concentration of some sort. I'm not sure what level yet, but that's what it's saying. It's like, okay. But then what is this forced conditions in the laboratory that mimic deep time? We now know what are the conditions. Why are you saying mimic deep time on a smaller time scale? Where are you getting that from? It's because it's been trained that way. We've been trained that way in school. I guess it's like brainwashing in a sense. You hear it over and over again. It's like, well, it's got to be true. Millions of years, deep time. But again, I'm just after what are the conditions? Why is the model trying to persuade me that you still need time? Yes, I understand that you need uh, mineralization can also take time. But watch this. I'll just go to my next response after this one. Thank you. Because I want to wrap this up. Thank you. In a previous response, there are three requirements to form a fossil, stating that one of the three can't happen over millions of years and is not a valid argument because all three are needed. So it explaining why you need millions of years is because mineralization can take millions of years. But I'm saying, but that's not a valid argument because all three are needed, right? And then I copy and paste what it said here. And he says, yeah, I understand your concern. Usually these things are pretty nice. So it wants to help me to understand based on what it was trained, which is good. Quick burial versus over time overall time scale, rapid burial, metal replacement can be long time scale. But we just saw in the lab it doesn't have to take that long. But watch this as I scroll down for your enjoyment. But again, you can do this yourself. Fossil fish with another fish in its mouth. So it, it's interesting. So it has a conclusion, but I want to jump to here. So I said, thanks. I appreciate the response. In the lab, we know that mineral replacement can happen in hours to a few months of time, which can be repeated. Again, this is science. Since a rapid burial is required, is it possible to create or preserve a mammal with flesh and or organs? Is there any delays in metal replacement, or is there no delay? I'm just trying to say, or is there actual delay? Well, now it's 24 seconds, but whatever. So it says blah blah blah. Preserving soft tissues. It says rare and special conditions. In the fossil record, soft tissue preservation, muscles, skin, internal organs is exceptionally rare, as we see usually bones. But it does occur. It's usually due to fast burial in an anoxic environment, chemical and microenvironments that favor mineral infiltration. Example, fossilization or entrapment in resin, amber, tar, etc. And then it talks about micromediation, lab attempts, small specimens, rapid decay risk, conditions needed to preserve fresh flesh organs in the lab. So, gosh, I guess it's been a long time now, but modern times, we have found dinosaurs with flesh with red blood cells, and the flesh is, again, it's elastic. So it's like, okay, why is it elastic? If it's been replaced with minerals and the deepest stuff, why isn't it hard like a rock? Why am I able to stretch the skin? You can't stretch a dinosaur's skin if it's millions of years old with this mineralization process. So, and then plus, why is it near the surface of the earth? Why isn't it way down? So there are. That's why it's good to challenge some of these premises. Temperature and pressure control, time frame hours versus months. Is it possible to preserve a whole mammal? It's focusing on trying to do this in a lab. That wasn't necessarily my intention to say you have to do this in the lab, but it says, what is needed. Yes, we understand. That's what I'm trying to get. What is needed? What is needed? Tell me the science of what is needed. But I'm having fun with it, with its premise of saying, but natural, it takes a long time. Well, who says it takes a long time? We just prove it doesn't take a long time. We now know what's required. Something like that in the past, you had to bury something quickly, had to happen, and it lines up very well with the flood model, a worldwide flood with the great deeps, the crust, supercritical water, extremely hot underneath it, coming up, pushing, maybe microorganisms of the crust itself or whatever. I don't know, but that's huge. So if it's rare, why do we have so many fossils? If it's all local or regional from floods and stuff, but we see a lot. And then let me just say one more thing before we wrap this up. We have oil underground. We keep hearing how much oil we have. We know it's finite, but how long can it last? But we keep hearing there's so much of it. And I need to look this up to confirm this, but I thought oil came from carbon, like trees. I need to look this up. So this, say for now, a lot of this oil came from trees. Well, we must have had a whole lot of trees at one time, and then kind of wiped out to create the oil. Just saying, I need to look that up. So here it says, I think as I wrap this up, in a previous response, it was stated after that immediate entailment, the mineral replacement fossilization proper can be slow in nature, unless conditions are usually favorable or artificially accelerated in the lab. So I quote it. Then I said, there are photos and reports of hours, days, weeks, and months in nature for the mineral replacement. Are you aware of these? If so, please share 3 of them. So I'm saying, yes, even though it can take time, perhaps from what it believes, what it's been trained, and maybe I guess it's factual, to do this replacement of the minerals. I said, are you aware of any? Can you share 3? So it says, yeah, there are some. There's one, which is, let's see, teddy bear, fossilized, shoes fossilized, hats fossilized. They're not millions of years old. And then it says, why it's fast. The water is exceptionally minerally rich. Continuous flow ensures fresh mineral supply, carbon dioxide, outgassing, blah, blah, blah. Interesting. And then Lake Natron, Tanzania. We have these small animals and birds that die or become immersed in the lake and develop a striking white classified blah, blah, blah. Rapid, we got this. And what are some things here? Days, within days to weeks, right? So it's quite interesting. And then we have other things as I go through here to conclude. And some of those other things are, if we look at the Grand Canyon, we see the layers, and we're told it takes millions of years. If we take tests of how old these rocks are, so it's between here and here. It's like, okay, but there's a vertical fossilized tree that goes across millions of years of layers. Vertical fossilized tree, petrified. How does that work? How can you have something that is a tree going across millions of years? Don't make sense. So again, that I hope you enjoyed today's thought of the day on this. There's going to be multiple parts. Sorry this went so long, but I thought it was worth talking about the premises. We need to evaluate, is the premises true? And to say, well, would you be so kind to explain to me where you're getting that information, and because I need to assess if that premise is true, and maybe I just need more information. And hopefully that new information says, yeah, okay, the premise is true. Okay, good. Yeah, let's move on. Or if it's not true, if they can't prove it, they don't know. It's like, okay, oh, I proved it. You can refer to this. Great. And then later I go home and I look at it and say, oh, wait a minute. It's referring to this, this, this. It goes right back to itself. That's called circular reasoning. The premise hasn't been verified to be true. So we have to use our mind. We have to repeat things. We have to observe things. And if we don't know something, we have to admit we weren't there. But then we look at other evidences. It's like, well, if there's a dinosaur not buried that far underneath the earth and it still has flesh and red blood cells and you can stretch the skin, how can that be millions of years old? It makes no sense. We can demonstrate fossilization can happen quickly. So that's the point of today. Premise and fossilization does not take that long, and we understand what conditions are needed. Thanks, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Talk to you later.